watching L24 Nightly News with Mehmet Abzian. To the headlines. At least 60 people have been killed in the ongoing massacres carried out by the occupation in the Gaza Strip. The UN calls for expanding the scope of aid access, and Algeria calls for immediate action to end violations in the Strip. 70 agreements worth $5 billion crown the Islamic Development Bank's annual meetings concluded in Algeria, with praise for the summit's success and emphasis on the importance of its outcomes. Also tonight in Sudan, the army announces the discovery of mass graves south of Durman and confirms full control over the Jumayya villages in Khartoum. Meanwhile, the Sudanese Doctors Network warns of a dramatic surge in disease and epidemic cases. And on the eve of the fifth round of Iranian nuclear talks in Rome, Tehran warns that any Israeli attack on its nuclear facilities would mean the UN and would implicate the US and threatens a decisive and devastating response to any aggression. Hello and welcome back to your nightly news. First, at least 60 Palestinians have been killed and others injured as a result of the ongoing Zionist bombardment of the Gaza Strip since dawn today. According to local Palestinian sources, the occupation's Air Force launched a series of airstrikes targeting several areas across the Strip, resulting in the martyrdom of more than 60 Palestinians and the injury of many others. And 13 Palestinians were killed and others wounded on Thursday morning in a Zionist airstrike targeting Jabal al-Balad in the northern Gaza Strip. According to local Palestinian sources, civil defense teams recovered the bodies of 13 martyrs following an airstrike by the occupation's aircraft that targeted two homes in the Zarqa area of Jabal al-Balad in the north of the Strip. The United Nations has stated that the amount of aid entering Gaza remains entirely insufficient, stressing the need to expand and sustain the flow of humanitarian assistance. In a statement, the World Food Programme affirmed that its teams are doing everything they can to deliver emergency food supplies to Gaza, emphasizing the urgent need for the international community to act swiftly to ensure the continuous and uninterrupted flow of aid into the Strip. Algeria has called for immediate actions to be taken to end the occupation's violations of international humanitarian law in the Gaza Strip. In his speech during the UN Security Council's annual debate on ensuring the safety of civilians and humanitarian workers during conflicts, Algeria's permanent representative to the UN, Ammar Ben Jama, called for an end to the policy of double standards, warning against the continued silence of the UN Security Council in the face of the violations which are perpetrated in Gaza.
And Ms. Jean, the failure to protect civilians is not the result of lack of norms. It is a failure of will. The rules exist. What is lacking is the political will, is the political courage to enforce them. We must collectively reaffirm that international humanitarian law is not negotiable. It is the last shield for the innocent amid the horror of war. We owe it to the victims to ensure that these rules are upheld. All victims deserve justice, deserve accountability. Respect for international humanitarian law must not be the exception. It must be the rule.
And China has called for a thorough investigation into the shooting of a diplomatic delegation by Israeli forces near Jenin refugee camp in the occupied northern West Bank. At a Thursday press briefing, Chinese Foreign Ministry spokesperson Mao Ning said Beijing is closely monitoring the incident and condemned any action that threatened the safety of diplomatic personnel.
China is deeply concerned about the incident and firmly opposes any actions that endanger the safety of diplomatic personnel. We call for a thorough investigation to prevent the recurrence of similar incidents. The situation in the West Bank has remained tense for some time. China urges all parties, particularly Israel, to refrain from taking any actions that could further escalate tensions.
The Islamic Development Bank concluded its 2025 annual meetings in Algiers after 4 days. Representatives from 57 countries and over 2,000 experts discussed strengthening partnerships, project financing, cooperation, current challenges, and export diversification. And the meetings ended with the signing of several agreements to fund projects in infrastructure, agriculture, health, and climate change mitigation. The president of the Islamic Development Bank Group revealed that the group's annual meetings held in Algeria resulted in the signing of more than 70 agreements with 26 member countries and several regional institutions with a total value nearing $5 billion. Jasser emphasized that this level of cooperation reflects the bank's commitment to provide intangible development solutions with real impact. And still with the 2025 IDB annual meetings, our own reporter Zahra Farjani was present in the event and brought us more.
Under the theme Diversifying Economies, Enriching Lives, the 2025 Islamic Development Bank Group annual meetings concluded in Algiers, Algeria. The event brought together thousands from across the Islamic world under the banner of unity, strategy, and shared development.
The IDB, the meetings for the annual meeting in Algeria has been great. They've been covering a widespread amount of topics, a wide variety of topics. I've been able to meet a lot of different people throughout the bank and throughout the countries that the bank works in. That's been really beneficial. And it's a lot of transformative discussions about what the bank's been doing. So it's been a great experience so far.
This gave us the opportunity to come together, discuss the major and important issues hindering socioeconomic development in the region. This region, but also globally.
The meetings resulted in the signing of more than 70 agreements, totaling nearly $5 billion and benefiting 26 member countries. These agreements reflect the group's commitment to delivering high-impact, results-driven development across critical sectors.
SAWCA just signed an insurance agreement with ICEC in order to develop its capacity and support our exporters to penetrate the international market by providing guarantees against the risk of non-payment of the international buyers, especially that.
We also have been able to meet with partners coming from across the globe, having discussions with them, as well as also signing agreements with them, and also finalizing business deals that we have been working on with them.
A major announcement was the launch of the IDB Group Strategic Framework for 2026-2035, which outlines the bank's priorities for the next decade, emphasizing productivity, inclusion, and institutional transformation.
The final day of the IDB Annual Meetings 2025 wrapped up a week of strategic dialogue and regional cooperation. With trade, investment and development at the heart of the agenda, the outcomes reflect a shared vision for prosperity in Africa, the Arab world and beyond. This is Zahra Farjani reporting for All 24 News from the Algiers International Conference Center, Abdellatif Rahal.
Dr. Muhammad Ali Al-Qari, chairman of the Sharia Board of the Islamic Development Bank Group, affirmed that the group's annual conference in Algeria was a great success, praising Algeria's efforts in this regard. Al-Qari also noted that the Islamic Development Bank is working to provide financial assistance to the least developed member countries at a time when global financial institutions are reducing their funding.
This annual meeting comes this time in Algeria, and of course was a very successful meeting, and of course the hospitality of the government and the people of Algeria made it very successful. ISDB is one of the most successful cooperative projects in between Muslim countries. And now, alhamdulillah, especially at the time where the rich countries are reducing their help to poor countries, ISDB comes as a very important source of finance. Of course, the outcome will be, inshallah, most useful. You know, as you must have read that one of the projects that have been approved is the finance to Algeria for establishing an infrastructure project, which is the railroad, which will take maybe 7 years to be implemented.
The World Bank praised Algerian authorities for diversifying exports beyond hydrocarbons and improving the business climate to attract investment. Ahmed Mustafa Nidiai, the World Bank's regional director for the Maghreb region, highlighted during the Islamic Development Bank meetings in Algiers that Algeria has effectively used oil revenues to develop its export sector.
Algeria has succeeded in using its resources to develop its export sector, as seen in the cement factories and chemical industries. Therefore, it is important for countries with natural resources to move up the value chain. The second policy I'd like to mention is that there is great potential to improve the overall framework in order to achieve diversification and make sovereign assets greener, more productive, and more efficient.
The Syrian Minister of Finance Mohammed Yasser Bernia described the meetings of the Islamic Development Bank held in Algeria as positive, highlighting the bank's commitment to financing several development projects in Syria. In an interview with Al24 News, the minister confirmed his country's openness to strengthening economic ties with Algeria.
There is cooperation between the Islamic Development Bank and the Syrian government across several sectors. I expect, God willing, that there will be significant improvement in relations with Algeria, and we greatly appreciate the brotherly support from the Algerian government. There is also strong mutual goodwill. I expect that in the coming days and weeks, there will be economic and investment activity between the two countries. Of course, as I mentioned at today's conference, the lifting of sanctions will encourage the return of investments to Syria and will motivate financial, regional, and international institutions to resume their operations in the country. This will undoubtedly have a very positive impact on Syria's economy.
Guinea's Minister of Planning and Cooperation, Nabi Ismail, has said that he agreed with Algeria's Minister of Finance to work on reviving relations in the field of energy, gas, and construction between the two countries. Speaking on the sidelines of the Islamic Development Bank's annual meetings in Algeria, the Guinean minister mentioned efforts to restore the air route between Algiers and Conakry and praised the Algerian president's dedication to ensuring the success of the meetings.
Yesterday, I met with the Minister of Finance and we discussed the bilateral relations between our two countries. We agreed to relaunch cooperation in the fields of energy, gas, and construction as soon as possible, in addition to re-establishing the air route between Algiers and Conakry. I must express my gratitude to the President of Algeria and the Algerian people. We are leaving satisfied and grateful, and we look forward to the visit of the Algerian ministerial delegation as well as the private sector. They affirmed that they feel at home here in their second country, Guinea.
The 7th Algerian Products Exhibition opened Thursday in Nouakchott, Mauritania, featuring around 200 exhibitors. At the opening, the Algerian Minister of Domestic Trade highlighted Algeria as Mauritania's leading economic partner and said the event reflects strong bilateral ties. The exhibition promotes Algerian products and highlights the industrial capabilities of Algerian businesses across various sectors. And the Algerian Mauritanian Business Council is also set to meet alongside the event.
فليس من المصادفة
It is by no means a coincidence that previous exhibitions have themselves become effective platforms for strengthening economic relations, increasing trade exchanges, and creating profitable partnerships across various sectors. Today, we are presented with a valuable and timely opportunity to deepen the bonds of partnership and economic integration by encouraging the private sectors in both countries.
The volume of relations between Algeria and Mauritania is developing day by day, rooted in deep historical ties and the strong bond between the two brotherly peoples that dates back to the ancient times. Today, Algeria accounts for 30% of the Islamic Republic of Mauritania's foreign trade exchanges. Algeria also has major investments in the country. As you well know, good intentions form a solid foundation, and this reflects the goodwill between Algeria and Mauritania. We do not see Mauritania merely as a market to sell in, nor do they view Algeria this way. It's much more than that. It's a strategic depth, a true partner for the Algerian economy.
The Algerian Union Bank in Mauritania offers full support to Algerian investors to boost their presence in the local market and ensure transparent legal transactions. Mohamed Zarouki, head of operations and development, said the bank's presence has strengthened trade relations and helped integrate Algerians into the market, encouraging investment.
The four main stakeholders of the Algerian Union Bank are BEA, Badr, CPA, and OCB. They held a meeting yesterday where the CEO was appointed. The bank's capital is estimated at $50 million. The establishment of this bank is part of the Algerian state's strategy to invest abroad.
The minister delegate to the Algerian Minister of Defense and Chief of Staff of the Army, General Saïd Chingriha, on Thursday supervised a live ammunition tactical exercise in the 3rd Military Region. A statement from the Algerian Ministry of Defense explained that General Saïd Chingriha supervised the exercise, codenamed Fortress Impregnable 2025, on the 2nd day of his working and inspection visit to the 3rd Military Region. The drill was carried out by units from operational sector south of Tindouf, supported by elements from various branches of the armed forces. And amid fresh political deadlock in Tripoli, new attention is turning to whether the Advisory Committee's latest recommendations can break Libya's political deadlock and pave the way for a long overdue Libyan-led solution. Usama Ayadi has the report.
A newly unveiled plan by Libya's Advisory Committee to stabilize the fractured nation is facing significant challenges. Caught between deep political divisions and persistent security threats, the proposal, which outlines steps toward governance reforms, economic recovery, and a national reconciliation, has been met with cautious optimism, but many fear that entrenched rivalries and militia violence could derail the process. The committee, formed as part of ongoing UN-backed efforts to bridge Libya's divides, has proposed a roadmap that includes electoral reforms, resource-sharing mechanisms, and a framework for unifying state institutions. However, key political factions remain skeptical about the proposal.
The Advisory Committee essentially had 4 main options to address the political challenges the country is facing today and to prepare towards elections.
Beyond political hurdles, Libya's fragile security environment, as well as foreign mercenaries and militants' activity in parts of the country, pose a major obstacle. These security threats highlight the persistent risk of violence. The committee's proposal includes measures to integrate militia into state security forces, but past attempts have failed due to lack of trust and competing loyalties. The Advisory Committee's plan will soon be presented to key Libyan institutions and international partners for approval. If accepted, it could pave the way for long-delayed elections and a more unified government. However, if rejected or undermined by spoilers, Libya risks sliding back into deeper fragmentation.
We are now going to upload an executive summary of the advisory report. We would like to hear your feedback. And when you give us that feedback, it will help us as UNSMIL to work with key political actors, stakeholders, and the public at large to develop a new roadmap on the way forward.
For now, the international community is watching closely, with UN urging all sides to engage constructively. The coming weeks will test whether Libya's leaders can prioritize national interests over factional gains, or if the country remains trapped in cycles of conflict and instability.
And in Sudan, the army has announced the discovery of 465 bodies buried in mass graves, saying the remains belong to members of the regular forces who were detained by the rapid support forces inside a school in the Sarha area of Durman. In a statement, the Sudanese armed forces accused the RSF of committing grave violations against detainees, claiming they were held as human shields under inhumane conditions. The Sudanese army announced that the Al-Jumaiyah villages located in the White Nile area north and south of Khartoum are now free of rapid support forces insurgents. In a statement Thursday, the Sudanese armed forces said their units had cleared the villages of insurgents and taken control. This operation fulfills a promise by Sovereignty Council Chairman Abdel Fattah al-Burhan to stop RSF violations across Khartoum state, especially in Al-Jumaiyah. The Sudanese Doctors Network reported a sharp rise in cholera cases in Khartoum state caused by contaminated water linked to power outages and a shortage of clean water. In a statement, the network confirmed 183 isolated cases in Khartoum, with increasing infections at Bashair Hospital, the Turkish hospital, and Al Banjadid Hospital. It warned of cholera's spread across the state as cases continue to rise since May 15. An Iranian Foreign Ministry spokesperson Ismail Bagheri announced that the fifth round of indirect negotiations with the U.S. will take place tomorrow, Friday, in Rome. Bagheri told Iranian state television that Tehran accepted a proposal from the Sultanate of Oman to hold the talks in Rome. He emphasized that the Iranian negotiating team remains determined to secure the nation's supreme rights and interests, including the peaceful use of nuclear energy and the lifting of what he called unjust sanctions. And Reuters reported on Thursday, citing an informed source, that U.S. Special Envoy Steve Witkoff and senior State Department official Michael Anton are set to travel to Rome on Friday for a new round of talks with the Iranian delegation over Tehran's nuclear program. The agency added that the discussions are expected to be both direct and indirect, similar to previous rounds. Iranian Foreign Minister Abbas Araghchi warned that the U.S. would bear legal responsibility if Israel launched an attack on Iran's nuclear facilities. In a letter to the United Nations, Araghchi stated that Iran would take action if Israel threats are not curbed, asserting that Netanyahu's plans to strike Iran warrant immediate condemnation from the UN Security Council. His remarks come amid growing American and Israeli speculation that the occupation might target Iranian nuclear sites if talks between Tehran and Washington fail. Iranian Revolutionary Guard Corps warned that Israel would face a decisive and devastating response if it attacked Iranian territory. IRGC spokesperson Ali Mohammed Naini stated that fear-mongering through threats over war would not succeed, pointing to what he described as a miscalculation by Israel in underestimating the strong popular and military support Iran could mobilize in times of war. The Houthi Ansarullah group announced on Thursday that it carried out 2 operations, one targeting Ben Gurion Airport and another hitting 2 Israeli targets in occupied Jaffa and Haifa. Ansarullah's military spokesman Yahya Sari'a said the ballistic missile strike on Lod Airport successfully halted air traffic. The second operation involved a double drone attack on vital targets in Jaffa and Haifa. He added that the group will continue its operations in support of Gaza until the aggression ends and the blockade is lifted. Ladies and gentlemen, that was a wrap for tonight's program. Thanks for watching and have a great night.